sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Hey there, deep divers. Ready to plunge into some pretty murky waters today.
Sounds intriguing. Let's do it.
All right. So today's deep dive takes us into the whole saga surrounding a potential TikTok ban in the U.S.
Ah, TikTok.
Yeah, and it's a story with a lot more twists and turns than you'd think. I mean, we're talking a massively popular app, the whole world of international politics and billionaires, essentially battling it out for control.
High stakes.
High stakes is right. It's a lot to untangle, so we'll be relying on a bunch of articles, mainly from Forbes, to kind of guide us through this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, what we're seeing here is like this head-on collision between, national security concerns and the idea of freedom of expression, which of course, has a huge impact on millions of TikTok users. And I think it raises these really crucial questions about what the future of the internet might look like.
Definitely. So to get a grip on how we even got here, I think it helps to look at the timeline of events. So President Biden, he signed that bill, what was it, back in April 2024, the one that basically gave TikTok this ultimatum, right? Sell to a U.S. company or face a complete ban.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of set off a chain reaction. Of course, TikTok didn't just, sit back and take it. They went ahead and filed a lawsuit arguing the ban was unconstitutional. And that's what's led us to this whole series of legal battles that are culminating in a Supreme Court hearing actually happening this month.
Wow. So much tension, right? Especially with that final ban date just kind of looming over everything.
Yeah, it's a real cliffhanger.
It is. It is. But, at the heart of all of this, why is the U.S. government so concerned about TikTok? What's really the driving force behind this push for a ban?
I mean, the core issues, if you boil it all down, are national security and data privacy. The U.S. government, they're really worried about the potential for the Chinese government to exert influence through TikTok. And that's especially concerning when you think about, just how massive TikTok's user base is and all that data they're collecting.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say those Forbes reports that came out about ByteDance, TikTok's parent company spying on journalists and mishandling user data, haven't exactly helped ease those worries.
Absolutely. I mean, those reports revealed some pretty questionable practices that definitely raised red flags. Now, TikTok, they've consistently denied any wrongdoing. And they claim to have put safeguards in place, things like routing U.S. traffic through Oracle servers.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of skepticism.
Yeah, it's a tangled web for sure. And then you throw former President Trump into the mix, which just adds another layer of complexity to it all.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he was the one who initially pushed for the ban back in 2020, but then his stance kind of shifted after he took office. He even met with TikTok CEO Shou Zi. What's your take on all that?
Well, I mean, Trump's changing position definitely adds a whole other dimension to an already complex situation. It's hard to say for sure what his motivations are, but I think it's important to consider what actions he could still take. I mean, he could try to influence Congress to repeal the ban or even, delay it.
Yeah.
Or you could even go so far as to issue an executive order to suspend it altogether.
Wow. So even with the ban looming, there's still a chance that TikTok could get a reprieve.
It's definitely possible.
But wouldn't selling the company to a U.S. company just be like the simplest solution?
In theory, yeah, it sounds straightforward enough. But there's a whole other drama unfolding around the potential sale of TikTok. And it involves some pretty big names. You've got Project Liberty, this consortium led by Frank McCourt. They're aiming to buy TikTok and kind of restructure it with a big emphasis on data privacy. And then you've got, the ever unpredictable Elon Musk throwing his hat into the ring. And even tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft are showing interest.
It's like a high-stakes bidding war. But why hasn't a sale gone through yet? I mean, what are the sticking points?
Well, one major hurdle is the algorithm. It's like TikTok's secret weapon, right? It's incredibly sophisticated, personalizing the content for each user with remarkable accuracy. Right. And it's probably the most valuable asset the platform has. But ByteDance has been arguing that selling this algorithm separately from the app is, and I quote, illusory, and would basically just make TikTok useless.
Wow, that's a pretty bold stance. It's almost like saying take it or leave it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I think it's time to shift our focus to two pretty key figures in this whole saga, Frank McCourt and Jeff Yas.
Yeah, they're definitely central to the story.
So McCourt, he's got this background in media and sports ownership. I mean, he owned the Dodgers for a while, right?
That's right.
He's also been a vocal advocate for data privacy, and he's got this vision for a TikTok that gives users more control over their data and even a say in how the platform's governed. His Project Liberty could be a real game changer if he can pull it off.
It's definitely a compelling idea.
It is. It is. And then we have Yes, who is a major GOP donor, and this is the intriguing part, a major investor in TikTok.
Talk about being caught in the middle.
Exactly. How do you see his involvement playing out in all of this?
I mean, Yas's dual role as both a stakeholder in TikTok and a major player in GOP politics makes him, well, a pretty powerful figure. Some people even speculate that he might have influenced Trump's, evolving stance on the ban. And you can't forget about his potential influence on Congress through, all those campaign donations he makes.
It's like this whole tangled web of financial interests and political maneuvering.
Exactly.
But let's bring it back to the users. I mean, what will this ban actually mean for the millions of people using TikTok here in the U.S.?
Well, on a practical level, if this ban actually goes into effect, TikTok is basically going to vanish from app stores in the U.S. The website will likely be shut down. That means millions of users are going to be cut off. And there's also this concern about what happens to all the data from those U.S. users and whether it could end up being transferred to China.
That's a lot to process. What about all those people who say they'll just use a VPN to get around the ban? Is that a realistic option?
It might be a temporary workaround for some, but the government could easily crack down on VPN usage to really enforce the ban, And we can't forget about all the creators who depend on TikTok for their livelihood. For them, this ban could be devastating, potentially wiping out their income, their audience, and really, their whole creative outlet. It really shows you how vulnerable creators are in this digital world. I mean, their livelihoods are basically built on these platforms that they have no control over.
Yeah, it's a tough reality. And it brings up this bigger question of internet freedom and government control, But going back to these potential buyers, you mentioned a bunch of different companies, everything from like tech giants to these media moguls. What's motivating each of them to want a piece of this TikTok pie?
Well, for the big players like Microsoft and Amazon, buying TikTok would be a strategic way to tap into those younger demographics that really dominate the platform. It's a chance for them to expand their reach in the social media market and get access to all that valuable data that could help them improve their own algorithms and their marketing strategies.
So for them, it's really a business decision, a chance to make a lot of money. But what about McCourt and his Project Liberty? They seem to be coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah, McCourt's vision is definitely more idealistic. He's really putting the emphasis on data privacy and user ownership. He's proposing this model where users have more control over their own data and even a say in how the platform is governed. It's a pretty compelling idea, especially now with all these growing concerns about data privacy.
It almost sounds revolutionary, like a social media platform that actually puts users first.
Yeah.
But is it realistic? Can Project Liberty actually deliver on these promises?
That's the big question. I mean, there are some pretty significant challenges, both technically and logistically, that they would have to overcome. For example, how would they actually give users control over their data while still making sure the algorithm works and keeps the platform engaging? And can they really convince enough users and investors to buy into this new model?
And then there's, Elon Musk, the wild card. Whenever he gets involved, things get unpredictable. What do you think is driving his interest in TikTok?
Well, Musk has been pretty vocal about his concerns about censorship on social media platforms. He's even hinted at creating his own alternative. So acquiring TikTok could give him this powerful platform to put his vision of a less restrictive online environment into action.
That's interesting that you mentioned censorship, especially considering that, if TikTok is sold to a U.S. company, there's a chance that censorship could actually increase. Wouldn't that go against the idea of a free and open internet?
Yeah, that's a valid point. A change in ownership could definitely lead to changes in how content is moderated, and that could mean more censorship or even the suppression of certain voices. It's this delicate balance between, protecting users from harmful content and making sure people can express themselves freely.
It's a complicated situation for sure. And we can't forget about ByteDance. They're not just going to sit back and let themselves be forced into a sale, are they?
No, not at all. They've been actively fighting back against this forced sale, arguing that separating the algorithm from the app just isn't practical and that it would essentially destroy TikTok's value.
Yeah, they have a point. It's like trying to take the engine out of a race car. But earlier we talked about those institutional investors in ByteDance. How do they factor into all of this?
Well, these institutional investors, they hold a lot of sway. They have a big stake in ByteDance, and their interests can't be ignored. They're looking to get a return on their investment, so their decisions could have a real impact on how this whole TikTok situation plays out.
So do you think they would be more likely to support a sale, even if it means, compromising how the app works, just to protect their own financial interests?
It's hard to say. They have a tough choice to make. They'll need to weigh the potential profits they could get from a sale against the risks of basically breaking TikTok by dismantling its core functionality.
So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, basically. What about the technical side of this ban? How would it even be enforced?
Well, the government could force app stores to remove TikTok, so new users couldn't download it. They could also block access to TikTok's servers, which would effectively cut off all the existing users.
But couldn't people just find ways around that, like using VPNs to access TikTok from other countries?
Well, some users would definitely try that.
Yeah.
But the government could crack down on VPN usage to really enforce the ban.
So we've talked about the motivations of these potential buyers, the challenges of selling that algorithm, the role of these institutional investors, and even the technical aspects of enforcing a ban. It's a very complicated situation with a lot riding on it.
It really highlights how complex the digital age is, where these national security concerns are bumping up against individual liberties and the incredible power of these tech companies.
And in the middle of all this, you have millions of TikTok users and creators who are caught in the crossfire.
Yeah, their experiences and their concerns are really at the heart of this whole debate. I mean, imagine you're a teenager who's built this following on TikTok. You're sharing your creative work and connecting with people.
Or maybe you're a small business owner using the platform to promote your products and reach a wider audience.
And then suddenly your access to this platform is threatened. Your community is disrupted. Your livelihood is potentially in jeopardy.
It really makes you think about how these geopolitical battles have very real consequences for everyday people.
This situation forces us to think about the bigger implications for the future of the internet. How do we strike a balance between national security and freedom of expression?
And what does all this mean for user privacy and data security in a world where everything we do online is being watched and controlled? It feels like we're at this crossroads, and every path forward has its own set of obstacles and consequences.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If they go with a complete ban, well, that might make those who are really focused on national security happy. But it would also mean silencing this platform that millions of people are using to express themselves and connect with each other. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw even more legal challenges and political debates if that happens.
Yeah, and wouldn't a ban also stifle innovation, discourage new platforms from popping up?
Oh, it definitely could. I mean, if TikTok is banned, that might make other companies think twice about creating new platforms, especially if they have unique features or content. And that could really limit the choices that users have and kind of hold back how online spaces evolve.
And then on the other hand, selling TikTok to a U.S. company might address some of the security concerns, but then it raises all these questions about data privacy and censorship under new ownership. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we've seen how these big tech companies can influence what content is allowed on their platforms. And a change in ownership for TikTok could definitely lead to stricter rules or even the suppression of certain viewpoints.
This whole situation really shows you just how much power these tech companies have in our lives. I mean, they control the platforms we use, the information we see, the data we share.
It's a wake-up call for all of us to be more aware of what's happening in the digital world and the potential consequences of what we do online. We need to understand what happens to the data we share, how algorithms shape what we see online, and how power plays into all of this.
So what can we do as users? I mean, should we just accept that this is just how the internet is now, a space that's more and more controlled by governments and these big corporations?
No, absolutely not. We have voices, and we have a responsibility to use them. Stay informed about these issues, talk to people about them, and demand transparency and accountability from both governments and tech companies.
It's about being active, not passive. We need to take part in shaping how the internet evolves. We have to stand up for our digital rights, support ethical ways of handling data, and challenge any policies that threaten our freedom of expression and our privacy online.
Exactly. We need to remember that the internet is this amazing tool for connecting with people, for being creative, for communicating. It's up to us to make sure it stays that way, to make sure it's a place where we can hear different voices, where new ideas can flourish, and where individual rights are protected.
Well said. This deep dive into the TikTok saga has been, well, eye-opening to say the least. We've really uncovered how complex the digital age is, this clash between national security and individual liberties and all the power dynamics that are involved.
We've looked at the motivations of the key players, the technical hurdles, and the impact this could all have on users and creators. But I think most importantly, we've shown why it's so important to think critically, to be engaged, and to work together to create the kind of internet we want.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but this is just the beginning. The TikTok story is still going, and whatever happens will have a huge impact on the digital world.
And as things develop, it's so important to remember that real people are at the center of all of this. I mean, think about the TikTok employees who are worried about losing their jobs, the creators who depend on the platform to make a living, and the millions of users who enjoy using TikTok, who connect with others on it, who express themselves creatively through it.
It's a good reminder that decisions made in courtrooms and boardrooms have real consequences for real people.
This is a chance for us to really stop and think. What kind of internet do we want to create for ourselves and for future generations? One that puts security above everything else, even freedom, or one that encourages new ideas, protects our rights, and puts users in control?
Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. Those are the conversations we need to have.
So keep following this story as it develops. Read different perspectives, talk to people about it, and make sure your voice is heard. What happens to the internet is really up to all of us.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the TikTok saga for today. We hope you found it informative and that it's given you some things to think about. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll.